the tortoise's shattered shell. From high-flying to hard-hitting. The tortoise had always admired the birds, with their graceful wings and the freedom to soar through the skies. Whenever he saw them high up in the trees, he couldn't help but feel a pang of envy. He longed to know their secret, to understand how they could fly so effortlessly while he remained firmly on the ground. One day, as the tortoise was walking through the forest, he heard the sweet melody of birdsong coming from high up in the trees. He looked up and saw a flock of birds perched on the branches, their feathers shimmering in the sunlight. The tortoise felt a sudden surge of envy and longing, and he knew that he had to find a way to fly, like the birds. This burning desire consumed the tortoise, and he began to obsess over the idea of taking to the skies. He couldn't shake the thought from his mind, and he knew that he would never be content until he learned the secret of flight. So, he called out to the birds and asked them how they were able to fly so high. And thus began the fateful encounter between the tortoise and the birds. "Flap your wings and you're off," the tortoise exclaimed, incredulous. "It can't be that simple." "Oh, it is," one of the birds replied with a chuckle. "We just spread our wings and take off into the sky. It's a feeling unlike any other, soaring through the clouds and feeling the wind beneath our wings." "But how can I do that?" the tortoise asked, his eyes glimmering with hope. "I don't have wings like you do." "Ah, that's true," another bird replied. "But you can still fly, in a way. You can use feathers to make yourself a pair of wings." "Feathers," the tortoise repeated, unsure. "Where can I get feathers?" "At the kingdom's dump site," one of the birds suggested. "There are always discarded feathers lying around. You can gather them up and use them to make wings." The tortoise's heart leaped with excitement. Could it really be that simple? Could he finally achieve his dream of flying? He rushed off to the dump site, eager to collect as many feathers as he could. As he arrived at the dump site and began to search for feathers, it was a dirty, smelly place, filled with all manner of discarded items. But he persevered, picking up feathers of all shapes and sizes and carefully stashing them away. As he made his way back to his home, his heart raced with anticipation. He couldn't wait to begin crafting his wings, to see if he could really achieve the impossible. And so, the tortoise began to work tirelessly, weaving together feathers into 2 large wings. It was a grueling process, and he had to take breaks often to rest his tired muscles. But he was determined to see it through, to finally take to the skies and experience the freedom of flight. Finally, after many long hours, the wings were complete. The tortoise strapped them onto his back, and stepped out into the open air. He took a deep breath and began to flap his wings, just as the birds had instructed. For a moment, nothing happened. But then, to his amazement, the tortoise began to lift off the ground. He rose higher and higher, his wings beating with a steady rhythm. It was a moment of pure exhilaration, of soaring through the skies and feeling the wind in his face. The tortoise flew higher and higher, reveling in the sensation of flight. But as he looked around at the other birds soaring through the sky, he began to feel a sense of dissatisfaction. His feathers were a mishmash of colors and lengths, and they were old and worn. "Excuse me, my dear friends," the tortoise called out as he landed on a nearby tree branch. "I need your help once again." "What is it that you need, dear tortoise?" one of the birds asked. "Well, you see," the tortoise began hesitantly. "I've been flying with these old, mismatched feathers for a while now. And I can't help but feel envious of your beautiful, uniform wings." The birds looked at him sympathetically. "We understand how you feel," one of them said kindly. "But what can we do to help?" "Would it be possible for each of you to spare a feather for me?" the tortoise asked hopefully. "So that I can have a set of wings that are just as beautiful as yours." The birds looked at each other, unsure of what to say. It was a lot to ask, and they weren't sure if they wanted to give up their feathers. The birds gathered in a small clearing in the forest, holding a meeting to discuss the tortoise's request. They debated back and forth about the pros and cons of giving up their feathers, knowing that it would be a painful process that could potentially harm them. But in the end, they all agreed that the tortoise was their friend, and they wanted to help him achieve his dream of flying with beautiful, uniform wings. Some of the birds, however, thought this was a dangerous gift to give, as they knew that the feathers they were about to give him would be more powerful, allowing him to fly even higher and for longer periods than before. Before giving him their feathers, the birds gathered around the tortoise to warn him of the potential dangers of this gift. "Tortoise, we want to give you our feathers out of love and friendship, but you must be careful not to misuse them," they cautioned. Don't use them to harm others or to do things that go against our values as a community." The tortoise nodded solemnly, understanding the gravity of their warning. He knew that with great power came great responsibility, and he vowed to use his new wings for good. And so, one by one, the birds plucked out their feathers and handed them over to the tortoise. It was a painful process, and some of the birds even bled from the experience. But they endured the pain, knowing that they were helping their friend. Once he had collected all the feathers, the tortoise set to work on creating his new wings. He painstakingly arranged each feather in the perfect pattern, making sure that they were all the same length and color. Finally, he strapped the wings onto his back and took off into the sky. The other birds watched in amazement as the tortoise soared through the air, his new wings shimmering in the sunlight. With his new feathers, he was able to fly higher and farther than ever before. "You did it, Tortoise," one of the birds cried out in excitement. "You look incredible," another chimed in. The tortoise beamed with pride, feeling a sense of accomplishment that he had never felt before. "Thank you, my friends," he said gratefully. As Tortoise became more comfortable with his new wings, he began to think of ways to use them to entertain himself. He would swoop down from the sky and grab small animals, only to drop them from a great height, and catch them just before they hit the ground. He would swoop down on unsuspecting animals, startling them and causing chaos and confusion wherever he went. He also enjoyed flying over watering holes and making a huge splash, drenching animals that were trying to drink. At first, the other animals found Tortoise's tricks amusing and even impressive. They marveled at his newfound abilities, and some even congratulated him on his achievements. However, it wasn't long before they grew tired of his antics. Tortoise's constant pranks and tricks became a nuisance, disrupting the natural balance of the animal kingdom. Every time the birds tried to confront the tortoise on the ground, he would just fly away and not engage with them. This behavior of the tortoise displeased the birds greatly, and they held a meeting to discuss it. They agreed that they had to take back their feathers and teach him a lesson. As the sun began to set, the tortoise felt a rush of excitement run through his veins. He knew that the other animals would be at the river, and he had some new tricks up his sleeve to play on them. But as he started to take flight, he felt something strange happening. Tugs and pulls came from every direction, and he could feel the feathers on his wings being plucked out one by one. Panic set in as he realized what was happening. The birds were taking back their feathers. He screamed out for them to stop, begging them to wait for him to get back on the ground. But his pleas were lost in the howling wind, as the feathers continued to be pulled from his back. He could feel his wings getting weaker and weaker, and he knew that he was in trouble. As he plummeted towards the ground, he tried to flap his legs, but they were useless. The animals at the river looked up in shock, as the tortoise fell with a great thud, cracking his shell in many places. And that, my friends, is the story of the tortoise's shattered shell. As for the birds, to this day, they fly away at the slightest approach of any human or animal, lest they be asked for their precious feathers. What lessons did you learn from the tortoise's story? Do you think his arrogance and desire for attention were worth the price he paid? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and stay tuned for more tales of the Savanna in our next video.